first, to my right, we have Anjali, who is a community builder, creator in the ordinal space here. You used to work for, still do, or used to work for Collabland?
That's my company. I'm co-founder.
Oh, you're co-founder at Collabland. I'm connected to a lot of those. Also, I know some people got hacked connected to fake Collablands.
Fake Collabland.
Anything you want to just introduce yourself?
No, great to be here. Love the Ordinals. Excited to be building community with Ordinals.
Beautiful, beautiful. We'll talk more about that. Next, we got the infamous non-fungible Jan. You've probably seen him on Spaces, the Ordinal Show. Also, the chief chef at Xverse. So a lot of people, how you're actually buying your Ordinals, you're using that Xverse. What's going on?
Everybody.
Everybody.
You want to say everybody. Okay. If not, we need to change that ASAP.
Well, I'm on Sparrow.
Well, that's fine.
Okay, cool.
But, limitations.
Yeah.
No, I'm super excited to be here, of course, guys. Like, I love the show. I'm a follower, and now I'm here. Let's chat Ordinals, let's chat Bitcoin, let's chat Ord Denver. So much stuff is going on here.
We've done it. We've taken over a conference. Okay, don't tell the ETH. Okay, beautiful. Next, we got Andrew. Andrew already works in distributed systems. Apparently, as a programming nerd myself, I'm excited. We're going to make this whole topic just nothing about scaling infrastructure. Your company's Versatis, which is bringing compute to Bitcoin. Why don't you tell about yourself?
Yes, we're building an app engine on top of Eigenlayer, and basically part of that plan is to bring more complex compute to Bitcoin.
Beautiful. I was going to say Eigenlayer is so hot right now. So hot. And last, definitely not least, Jason Fang from Sora Ventures, investing in Bitcoin and something close to my heart, DeSci. What's going on?
Yeah, this is the future of Bitcoin and the future of Ethereum. So in my opinion, I think these are going to be the two biggest narratives in the next coming years.
Beautiful. Okay, so let's just get into it. So we have a lot of people that are all involved in the Bitcoin ecosystem in some way, right? Some people, I'm guessing, actually were here before Ordinals, right? When you first heard about it, were you any maxi reaction of what are they doing? They're spamming on the chain, or did everyone just see it, read the Ordinal theory, and go, okay, this is great?
I'll start. I thought it was fantastic because fees to miners is going to be important. And as it keeps happening, you need to make sure that miners are getting paid.
Totally.
And it brought a lot of fees to miners.
I thought it was fantastic too, especially because I come from ETH and other chains, and I've seen how important NFTs are, how they bring people together, and just the cultural importance, that kind of story meme wave that you can catch with NFTs, and it made me very excited about that coming to Bitcoin.
Yeah, same here. We have been building on Bitcoin for the past 3 years.
Wait, before Ordinals?
Of course.
How? What were you doing?
Of course.
Stacks.
Yeah, well, it didn't start like that, right? It started the first things that we built into the wallet is just basic transactions, basic Bitcoin transactions. Obviously, what do you do? And 3 years ago, nobody really wanted to do anything else with their Bitcoin. Just acquire from an exchange and send it to your ledger, right? That's what majority of people would do. And so obviously then we kind of started exploring the L2s, stacks. That was the only thing that was actually cooking a little bit in the previous cycle in terms of having developers developing stuff on it, and it was sort of connected to Bitcoin, right? And so we looked at that, and then we're looking at what's next? Should we do Lightning Network? Should we do something else? We didn't really see much adoption in any of those other protocols, to be honest, in terms of developers building applications and having potentially tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of daily active users that we could get. And so we're kind of really struggling. We're what do we do next? And then Ordinals happened.
Totally.
And we're of course, all in from day one. Come on, we're looking for that.
I was gonna say I was laughing because every time I did anything with my Bitcoin, I got yelled at. They said, "Wait, you're not supposed to. If you sell it, you're not a maxi. You're not in the club. You don't believe in it." And I was like, "What? How do I survive?"
Totally, that was one reaction actually, which is Ordinals. Who's gonna spend their Bitcoin to buy Ordinals? Who are these people that are gonna actually part with their Bitcoin? Yeah, for sure. Big reaction.
Totally. So Jason, you're on the investing side, right? Ordinals, they've been out now for over a year. They're ancient in crypto terms. How fast was it until you started hearing pitches for Ordinal projects?
I think we're one of the earlier funds in the space to start investing in Ordinals since Q1 of last year, right? And when we first invested, we were kind of concerned that there were not enough investors out there. And so what we did was we started investing in accelerated programs and funds, which as a fund, it didn't really make much sense, but because we were so kind of sold by this the future of Bitcoin and utility, and we knew that something big was going to happen. We felt it's important that we got the right partners to work with, and so we did a bunch of investments around that. And then just a couple months ago, which is when Ordi obviously popped, but in the process of that, we realized, okay, it's more about getting the right infrastructure involved, right? So it's like there's a lot of people who are interested, but it's Bitcoin is not Ethereum, and so it's like we gotta go back to like ground zero and build everything from scratch again, right? And then now it's more like we got a lot of stuff building, but we need better developers. And so this entire process is like, as a fund, I'm just give you some perspective. We have invested in 25 companies in the Ordinal space, and this is like pure venture deals. Like we're not buying we're not counting like all the liquid stuff. And so that thesis has changed. I think from it's been like a year, but it felt like 4 or 5 years because the thesis around like what's important now versus like what's important in the future. Like that narrative changed like every 3 months.
So do you have like a date when you signed your first term sheet, right? So February Ordinals, when was the first time it was like, boom?
Yeah, so our first investment into Ordinals would have been On-Chain Monkey.
Oh, wow, nice.
Yeah. So we left around for On-Chain Monkey. And so, when just to give full disclosure, I started my investment career at Fimbushi Capital. I was one of the earliest guys that worked there in 2015. That was when Vitalik was still actually a GP there. And so when I was at Fimbushi, I actually led the round for Danny's first company, which is called Blockseer. And they did Bitcoin analytics when they worked with the FBIs. And so like this guy was like, Harvard undergrad, Stanford PhD, incredibly smart guy, but then like, basically, looking for the next big thing after he sold his company last year. And so that MetaGuild was his thing, right? But at that time, it was kind of like weird. It was like, we want to do good things. I'm like, that sounds like a sketchy pitch. You know what I mean? But then it became obvious to me that it was more than just that, right? It was like, it was a collection that was the early days in Ethereum. They did a bunch of NFTs, and they were actually doing interesting things around community, right? So as a VC, we were learning, right? And then they made the one first move, which is they decided to spend $1 million USD migrating, they call it telebirding, from Ethereum onto Bitcoin, onto Ordinals, right? And I was like, okay, well, what's so interesting about that? And then they're like, well, most of the digital art on Ethereum, they're kind of like semi-baked, half-baked. And then if you look at some of this stuff that's happening on Ethereum, they're all using IPFS, right? Most of them are decentralized storage. But on Bitcoin, everything they hold all the properties of Bitcoin, and that was like their first, in the first moment where I was like, this is going to be huge, and I'm like, well, can this also be in the form of a fungible token? And it's like, you could, but then this was like again early, right? This was like, and like BRC20 was early, everything was early, but that was when I realized like something big was going to happen.
Totally. So I mean, it's interesting too. Every time we think about venture, and then you get into these ordinal projects, it's kind of a crazy scene, right? I know sometimes you're going to be like, okay, so what are we buying here? How much money did Node Monks raise? And it's like, for these JPEGs, and the plans aren't fully there. It's kind of, it's a little weird sometimes when you sometimes mix that, with VC. Are you finding, like, since we've actually gone through the Ethereum cycle, it's easier now to invest in a company like OCM?
I'll be honest, right? So from an investor's perspective, it's very, very different because, we did a conference just a couple months ago. You were there, the Sora Summit, which, at that time, people said it was the biggest Ordinals conference into last year. But it's really interesting because, in a traditional mindset of investing in the Web3 world, it's generally you have a network of VCs, you talk to them, you mingle with them, and then we share deals. And the Ordinals space is so different. We know the alphas are all on Twitter. So it's like, after Sora Summit, which was like December, I started putting myself on the Twitter space, forcing myself to be on the Twitter space, getting myself in Twitter, start building my account. I mean, I gave out 1 Bitcoin to kind of start on, getting people excited about what we're trying to do. And then in between the community, I accidentally launched a token called the Sora token on Bitcoin.
You said you accidentally?
Oh
my God, whoops, I deployed it. Oh my God, whoops.
It was supposed to be a demonstration of collaboration between 2 portfolio companies, which was Tap Protocol and Ordinals Bot. They just basically support the inscription service for that. And obviously, as an investor, I'm like, hey, what better way is to celebrate that by doing, launching a Sora token? Because there was the Sora token on BRC20 is basically ranked. It's like limited set to 1, which is like it's ranked, right? So at that time, Roots is not available, so the other thing is Tap. And so we launched that, and then I just minted 1. I shared on Twitter. I'm like, hey, I'm minting at 1, and then I checked back in 10 minutes. It was at 25 holders, And then I'm like, wait, this is going to be something big. So I folded myself inside. And so I started minting some myself. But then I was like super inexperienced in minting. And while everything was happening, I was talking to Ordinals bot. I'm like, hey, since I'm using you guys, I should probably use some other service. And then I ended up using some really degen platform called ID Club. I'm not sure if you heard of it. So most of the Chinese audience use ID Club. And the reason for that is because they're half the price of Ordinals bot. And so, but I did not ask is, what's the limitation of these things? So for example, there's usually a sweet spot for like how much you can mint. And the strategy is, I think, is 21. They told me it's 21 every time after I realized that there was a limitation. And I didn't do that. I just meant straight for 200, which is about 1% of all the tokens. And it was stuck for like the longest time. But anyways, it was stuck for the longest time. And then I think I ended up getting like 0.8% of all tokens, like partially came in and the rest was basically just sniped out. And that entire experience was just like a moment where I went like, wow, this is so interesting. It's like, the more interesting thing is after that it got minted out, it went straight onto listing on the Ordinals wallet, and it was trading at some amount, and then within like 2 days it was like 50x, and then within like 7 days it was like 150x return. And I'm like, okay, well, I got some skin in the game, so like, why don't I start helping these guys like do some, turn it from a meme coin to something that's meaningful, right? And then we start getting the community to fund for listing, which is like people at one point were like this sounds like incredibly like insane, because like why would anyone want to pay that? So I personally gave a 10k USD, Ordinals bought 10k USD, and the rest of the community was the 30k, and we're going to get listed on Poloniex, which has access to HTX, and that is going to be the first token on the entire TAP community that is actually going on like a well-known centralized exchange, which basically I turned like this meme coin into like this quite significant historical moment for the entire TAP ecosystem.
You know we love first in the space. Everyone's like, it's the first meme coin that's ever been listed on a exchange. Yeah. Let's say, Andrew, since you're like technical and you've been like, I'm assuming you've been programming for a while. When did you start doing stuff on Bitcoin actually?
So very recently. So a couple of guys upstairs kind of got me into it. So my vision has always been to kind of, I think you might have mentioned this earlier, that there's sort of a lack of developers. That's not just true for Bitcoin, although it is true for Bitcoin, it's true for the entire Web3 space.
Yes.
There's only about 25,000 developers building Web3, and there's $27 million in the world. And so why? Why aren't there more developers building Web3? And I think there's a couple of reasons. Number one is we've tried to make things like very domain specific, and instead of using general purpose languages, instead of using existing tools, and so that's number one. Number two is I've always felt as though having compute directly tied to consensus was a huge mistake. I think it was $1 trillion plus mistake for Ethereum, and for most of the blockchains that have that. So naturally, I'm very interested in what the Bitcoin ecosystem has been trying to do, which is bring off-chain compute that effectively settles and proves information on Bitcoin. And I think that is the right way to do this. And the reason for that is that compute is largely deterministic. There's debates in the computer science community over whether, like, if you're running it on one operating system versus another, like sorry, I'm getting like very technical here, but the assembly may actually be slightly different. So does that mean that it wouldn't actually be deterministic? And then obviously you can like embed data races. There's all sorts of problems with that, but if you have the same program and you have the same data going into that program, you're always going to get the same data coming out of that program. So there's no reason to have consensus around compute. What you need is consensus around data. Data is the important piece of that. You need all the nodes in the network, or the nodes that are responsible for that compute, to agree on the inputs, current state, outputs. And if you have that, the compute is effectively deterministic.
Totally. So well, you mentioned a couple interesting things there. One is like the lack of developers.
Yep.
And truthfully, background, when I came to Web3, all my friends were like, so you're going to scam people now? There is a large stigma around, if you search Bitcoin on YouTube, you're going to find a bunch of why it's a scam. It's like those are the top videos, and people enjoy it a lot. And then there's a huge problem, which is we always describe it as it solves everything. And the developers are like, that's not how anything works. And it like really triggers people. I'm assuming you're hiring now. So how are you finding like recruiting efficiently people for your company?
Most of our internal engineers are Bitcoin Web3 natives, and a lot of them were like early Bitcoin adopters. So we typically hire internally people that truly believe in the space.
Totally.
I agree with you. I think there's a huge stigma. I think part of that is because
it's true.
Well, there are a lot of scammers. By the way,
of course.
Yes.
But to be clear, there's a ton of scammers in regular traditional tech.
100%.
Oh yeah.
The difference is that everything in this space is public. Everything. You launch a token, it's public, it goes up, it goes down. In the traditional tech world, you build a business and VCs write you checks. You defraud those VCs. Most of them don't ever want it to be known that they got defrauded.
Totally.
So they don't even mention it. So the number of people that have scammed VCs in Silicon Valley is way more than the number of people that have scammed retail in crypto. That said, there are. It's a real problem. There's not a lot you can do about it other than educate people to look out for the signs of a scam. The other thing that I think that is really, really important is we've done a really poor job of what the value proposition of a Web3 app is. What is the value proposition of building in Web 2 versus Web 3? And for me, what that value proposition is, based on what we're building, is that you get to bootstrap your user base way faster and cheaper. And so particularly applications that have network effects, typically what you do, Uber is a great example of this. Uber spent millions and millions and millions of dollars to build their driver network. Millions and millions of dollars. Because if they don't have the drivers, they don't have the users. And so building that hard side of your network on your application is way cheaper in Web 3 than it is in Web 2. And so that's a huge part of the value prop. Why would I build in Web 3 versus just using a SQL database? Well, because I can bootstrap my user base. And we have to communicate these key value props a lot better.
Totally. Also, being able to share the upside with your
user ownership.
Users or members, or what we call members, because that's part of it. It's not just the producer and the consumer anymore. We're also the investor, and we're also the marketing department and the biz dev. Like, you're really creating with community. Everyone is being able to participate when there is an upside, and that's not something you get in Web 2. Also, because of smart contracts, it's like you can split fees amongst multiple people, multiple participants. And it's all tracked on chain. And so even in the future, if a project tends to make money, you can retroactively distribute to everyone that's participated. Like, that just kind of record keeping is not possible in Web 2.
Yeah, it's extremely powerful. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, user ownership, user governance. There's probably like 6 or 7 like really great value props that we've just utterly failed to communicate to Web 2 devs. So number one, though, in my opinion, also like very big fan of economics, I think it's a marginal demand question. I think we've erected barriers to entry. And as a result of erecting barriers to entry, fewer developers have come over. And when you combine that with the stigma, when you combine that with poor communication of the value prop and all those other things, you end up where we're at now.
And there's this other thing too. I know when developers come over, the cost of developing is kind of crazy, right? I mean, I come from a startup world where the goal is to deploy 20 times a day. I want code on the server 20 times a day. And it was like, if I deploy 20 times a day, I would be broke in a month, everything. And then the fact that, if you deploy and you make a mistake, you have to pay more money. That's just the opposite of the ethos that everyone's been working at. And there's good reasons, why that it is that way. But yeah, it's a tough thing to communicate.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We could talk about our model offline because I think we're solving some of these extreme pain points. Yeah.
Well, there's something interesting that you mentioned too, Anjali, is like how everyone is involved in the marketing as well as the building and whatnot. I don't think often you hear like, okay, I'm a VC, I'm cutting checks. I got to get on Twitter. I got to be on Twitter more and get the info here. You're building a wallet that everyone is using. You're hosting a space regularly. You know what I mean? You're talking to the people. That is not something that,
Yeah, I mean, Twitter is important for sure, but also like it's a small subset of what actually exists over there, right? Because like, you go on a space and you have 500 people there, right? Max, maybe 1,000. But like, our ambition is to have millions and tens of millions of users, and they're not all on Twitter, right? So I think you also kind of have to keep that in mind and navigate that ecosystem, that not everybody is on Twitter all the time. It's not that, the entire crypto space is just the thing that is on Twitter. Ultimately, during the bear market, yes, it's more because like the real crypto degens are still here and they're all on, like majority of them are going to be on Twitter. So, I think that's something to keep in mind. But, I like what Jason mentioned about the VCs in Ordinals, right? Because there's still not so many. I mean, things are changing very rapidly right now. Like you are here in Denver, you go to events at Ethereum or ETH Denver, and everybody talks about Bitcoin. Like all the biggest funds, they want to invest in these L2s, they want to invest in these companies, and things are becoming pretty crazy. When we were raising last year, we have been in this space from basically day zero. I have been talking to people since February, January last year, and I had probably 300 conversations with different VCs. And every time I mentioned Bitcoin, building on Bitcoin and Ordinals, everybody would be like, get the fuck out of here. Like this is never going to work. This is going to go to zero. The maxis are not going to allow it. People are going to filter it. The community is so fucked on Bitcoin. Like it's never going to work. And only handful of people actually believed in it, and those guys are going to do super fucking well. I guarantee you that. Like all those investors that invested in Xverse, because we were the first company that probably raised a proper round, in Ordinals. We're the first one, and we started the wave of other companies raising after us. So all those VCs that basically said like, yeah, we're going to invest into infrastructure, probably invested in like 5, 10, 25 other companies, maybe Angel Check, maybe something bigger. These guys, in 1 or 2 years are going to do fucking well, I guarantee. So, it's changing, people are kind of coming around and they see that there is something to be, created here in this ecosystem, and that we have really changed the culture of Bitcoin, building on Bitcoin. And this is something that I'm so fucking excited about, like 2024, 2025, things are going to go ballistic. I think people are just not ready.
Yeah, on top of that, I had a bunch of these conversations earlier because there's sort of this vibe of like euphoria, but at the same time, like a fear that this is happening too quickly. I don't know if you guys saw that this week.
100%. Yeah. I mean, almost all-time high, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty quick, yeah.
And it happened so fast. And the thing I keep reminding them is that like 401k distribution in the ETF hasn't even started yet.
Yeah.
You're talking about literally 1% of a quarter of every corporate person's paycheck, every single pay period is going to go into Bitcoin in the future, in the near future. And so you're going to have this inflow into Bitcoin. At the same time, obviously, supply is going to get cut in half in a couple months here. Like, there hasn't been an alignment of the stars like this in a really long time. And then on top of that, now there's a lot of things you can do with your Bitcoin, right? Like you were talking about earlier, the culture on Bitcoin was very, very toxic before Ordinals.
Yeah.
And I think it drove a lot of people away. And now a lot of those people are coming back because there's now something for you to do. And they just tell the maxis to shut the fuck up. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, I go to Bitcoin Talk and I read the maxi threads all the time. It's like one of my favorite hobbies. I love watching how mad they get. I go to the spaces. It's pretty enjoyable because they are passionate people who are very smart. Yeah. So also just make sure, Jason, it is past 4:20 at this moment. I don't know if you do have I know you said you had a hard out here. Yeah. And I'm going to start asking you more questions if you
Sure.
Yeah. So one thing that is early on is the maxi questions of, hey, we can get rid of this. We can make a update that can get rid of, essentially, we can prune Ordinals off, right? Was that scaring anyone off in your conversations earlier? Or was it always like, no, you're not going to be able to get rid of this?
For sure. I think not just as VCs, right? I mean, I got my first hate message just a couple of days ago from Bitcoin Maxi. Just telling me, hey, like you're dumb, stop spamming on Bitcoin, get the fuck out. And I looked at him as he blocked me, right? That's really funny, right? So I shared it and I tweeted about it. I'm like, that's when you kind of know you made it to the Ordinals Club. But no, I think the point here is that in anything that I've seen, and again, I've been investing since like 2015 on a professional level. It does feel like the early days of ICO, and like rarely do I feel so confident about like investing in this one narrative, to the point that initially we have two funds. First fund was like invest in mostly entertainment, like SocialFi, GameFi, all that stuff. Fund 2 initially was 25% Ordinals, 25% DeSci, and other things. And now we're basically pivoted to investing 7% of our AUM into Ordinals. And so I mean,
smart.
So I mean,
Not financial advice.
Financial advice for the investors,
for
not
investors,
for the retail.
yeah. I don't think people realize how much value we are bringing to like the securing Bitcoin as a network in general, right? I mean, every 4 years there's still going to be this halving going on, and then there's going to be people questioning the doubts of like, hey, if Bitcoin ever going to be secure, because like, you know, it's not going to make sense from an economic perspective, right? And just like, people don't realize that like that's what we're doing, right? We're investing on the utility of Bitcoin so that miners will stay in business, so that there's the security of Bitcoin will be consistent with kind of the halving. And by doing that, we're actually securing everyone's bags here, right? So it's like not just Bitcoin, it's like everyone's holding like shitcoin, altcoin, like yeah, if Bitcoin goes down 50%, yeah, you better be your shitcoin is going down at least 80%, right? So it's like we're doing a huge favor here. I think people will slowly realize that. But again, we're not like a crazy like multi-billion-dollar fund, and so for that reason, we're really
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, not yet. But hopefully we'll get there one day. But the whole point here is we are very efficient in terms of how we allocate capital and where we allocate capital. Whereas most of the stuff that's happening, a lot of big VCs right now are focusing on L2 because it does make sense for a lot of these big VCs to be investing. Like if your fund is like well over 500 million, then it makes a lot of sense to be investing in Bitcoin layer 2. That narrative is going to hold because this valuation will drive. Kind of like that's how they make kind of their money. But for us, it's like we're very, very like ecosystem narrative driven, right? So we spend a lot of time on Twitter. We spend a lot of time talking to a lot of entrepreneurs. We spend a lot of time talking to community. And so the whole point is that we are going to be spending a lot of time on things that actually, in our opinion, is it's unique to what's actually important to the space today, right? Not in the future, not in like 5 years, not like today. Right, and these are simple things that maybe from the Ethereum world it makes a lot of sense, but on Bitcoin world, like it's different. Ethereum is not Bitcoin, right? And the way that I've kind of explained to people is like Bitcoin is like an embryo, right, with no legs and no arms, and we're going back to ground zero, and so give us some time to build on it. It's going to take some time, but when you build on it and once you invest in those directions, people will see the value add over time.
Totally. I think you said something too, which is like you build stuff today. People use it right away. There's people in this house that you show them, they go, oh cool, what's the site? Okay, cool, can I use it right now? And they're like, people are really in an adoption phase, and there's so many problems that just solve one of the problems. We're building the biggest amazing platform. It's like we just need to trade stuff faster. I need places to find data easier,
and then over time what will happen is a lot of that stuff will integrate, right? It'll
Totally.
integrate. Multiple different platforms will have different things that they're using, and luckily a lot of the ethos in this space is open source. So a lot of that stuff is just going to be eventually consolidated to a place or aggregated to a place, but while still passing through all the benefits to the original developers.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned both of you have now mentioned good for the miners. We do have to think about that. People need to think about that. And I know a lot of you're paying money to some random person. You're like the person who keeps the network up. They're a good person to pay. It's not a random person. They do work for us.
A blockchain is a three-sided marketplace. We're used to thinking in two-sided marketplaces because that's what most marketplaces are. But you have user, developer, and operator, and you need all three. If you're missing one leg of that, then it doesn't work.
Totally. Well, I was going to say, actually, so Anjali, from Collabland, actually, right, that's been someone who's been deeply integrated into 1,000 Discords. It's part of, like, so many communities. Now we've actually seen Ordinals come out, and a lot of it is in Discords, right? It's part of the culture. What have you seen that's, like, different about these, the new flavor of degens and investors versus what you saw before?
Yeah, that's a good question. I spoke at a conference in October in London, Bitcoin Unleashed. It was actually sponsored by Stacks. However, it was my first experience with a Bitcoin conference. And it wasn't just Stacks or L2 conversations. It was literally all Bitcoin types of conversations, including lots and lots of ordinals. Thank you. Bye-bye. And it was actually really very cool seeing the excitement about ordinals. And I will say it felt like, and I know this is a whole other chain, but I definitely got early ETH vibes. Okay, good. You get it. So everyone is excited. Everyone is like joyful. No one is like beaten down with a bunch of rugs yet. And so there was a lot of... It'll come. It wasn't there yet. And Bitcoin was 24,000 in October. And the hype around Ordinals and the enthusiasm around Ordinals made me feel super nostalgic. I mean, Jen's been around forever for ETH NFTs too. Like, it feels really nostalgic.
It feels better, to be honest.
It is better because it's on Bitcoin.
Well, and I think that's like one of the things, right? Coming into ETH, a lot of us, I mean, like, I read the Bitcoin white paper and I was like, oh my God, this is hope, right? But there was nothing to do except for buy and hold, where ETH, there was like, we've done so much, right? We all learned about it together and taught each other and could mint art and, right, like solve all these problems. And now it's possible on Bitcoin.
Yes.
And
that's what definitely makes it special. And coming out of that conference and telling everyone, like within my ETH communities, like they're not what you think they are. Now it's like they're talking about DeFi, they're talking about NFT-Fi, they're talking about NFTs. Like, these are all things that we've been talking about, and there's people over there doing it right now, and it's very, very exciting. We need to start thinking about it and incorporating that.
It's exciting because it's starting from ground zero, right? Because this stuff didn't exist 1 year ago. And so to me, what's really the most exciting thing is that, like, we're basically painting the picture from a blank, canvas. It's really cool, right? Like, obviously some people get like a little bit impatient because they're like, oh, you don't have this shit on Bitcoin and maybe it's never going to be able to work and it's not possible and this because we don't have smart contracts and that. But like, you see that like a lot of these people are spending so much time and brain power and figuring things out now, because like before, like, again, it comes down to the maxi culture, right? Like, people didn't want a thinker in Bitcoin because when you did that, people would laugh at you, people would ridicule you. And so like, you're just going to go somewhere else. You're going to go to ETH, you're going to go to Solana because like people are actually welcoming
excited
there,
about it,
But now it's coming back here and like,
culture's changed because
yeah,
of
like,
Ordinals,
I mean, we completely changed the culture. Like, like there is no even a question. And obviously like people are going to claim different things when we look back in 5 years, but Ordinals, Casey, like basically the early people, the OGs, the early adopters, we have collectively changed the culture on Bitcoin. And I think like, I mean, like how many times in a lifetime you're going to be able to say this about something that big, about something that big and that impactful as Bitcoin, so.
I think like one of the things too, just like about, right, like when Omnisat started, it was a bunch of us who had we all knew people in the house, but not all of us had ever met. And all watching, like, I don't know how to build, right? But watching all of the smartest builders in crypto that I know completely turn their energy into Bitcoin. And not only that, but like when you say starting from zero, there is no infrastructure. And so like competing companies in a sense, right? They're all working together to build the basics that are needed. So it's like all of this stuff, just watching it, it's like, it's not going to happen at the speed on ETH because even, early ETH vibes, right? There was enough information and documentation out there.
There were standards.
And so it was like, I have no tech background. I could like deploy a token and figure it out because there was enough information. Now you don't even have the basics for that. And so I think people don't realize how much is being built and how much, like, when I saw every person that like, all the builders that I respect the most put all of their energy into building on Bitcoin, knowing how long it would take and like working just to make it for like the better good of this space. I think that's like one of the coolest things about the energy here.
Well, I will say, like, if on the beat down issue, like I've noticed so many of my friends who are beat down, they came over late, and when they did, they mid-curve everything because they're so beat down. And that's a thing of like, once 100%. You're beaten down, they're in their heads about everything. I've been rugged 50 times, and I've seen this before. No, instead of, those puppets are hilarious. Fuck yeah. Oh, dude, that's the magic wizard, internet money wizard. And it's like,
I have sold the bottom of a lot of things in Bitcoin because I'm like, I'm not going to make the ETH mistakes, not sell my ape at 150 ETH, but that's why I did put on the mirror, you look like you're not going to sell the bottom. Felt like everyone really needed that affirmation.
Yeah, we need to look at the mirror.
We all need it.
Yeah.
My solution to that is just round trip everything. Just never sell.
I just don't sell. Literally.
Just never sell. Like maybe one day in the future I will. But
I'm accidental diamond hands.
yeah. I just don't know when to do it. Like whatever.
I
Well, no, it's like that. My favorite term is I became an accidental community member. It's like, oh man, I guess I have to hang out in the Discord now and commiserate.
What I was gonna say earlier about like just changing the culture in Bitcoin. So I live in Miami. I'm a Miami native. Bitcoin. Miami was a Bitcoin city for a very, very long time. I know they're moving the Bitcoin conference to Nashville this year, which is interesting. But
Yes.
2 years ago, the Bitcoin conference, it was just so toxic. Every event that you went to, like if you weren't a laser eyes, like everybody looked at you weird. They treated you differently. They didn't want you around them. You know, Bitcoin not blockchain, you know, Bitcoin not crypto.
Just say one more thing. We talk about puppets and this guy shows up.
Oh yeah, he disappears.
You know,
he appears.
Like what the hell is going on?
But
Yeah, he's listening. He's got a thing.
and he's gone now.
He's gone. That's how it works.
But also, I feel like those maxis, right? Like, I got onboarded into crypto by maxis, and it's like, okay, if you believe in decentralization and like the core values of Bitcoin, you almost argue against it. Like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes
You mean
they're
Maxis
missing
do?
the point.
Yeah. No, well, a lot of them are, and a lot of them don't care
Yeah.
about the new wave. So you go back to 09 to like 2013, 2014, pre-ETH. A lot of those people believed in the ethos. Post-ETH, I felt like Bitcoin was becoming more and more people who cared about their fiat bags. You know, when is Bitcoin going to go to $1 million? When is Bitcoin going to go to $5 million? It's simple math, right? And all of that whole culture, without anything being built on top of it, the just hold, never sell, never use it for anything, never. That kind of created this ethos of like anti-competitiveness. Everything else was bad. Everything else was a scam. And the truth is, like, I mean, Satoshi's vision was one of effectively anarchy, right? Where competition drove humanity forward. And I think that was lost a little bit, and it's coming back.
Well, when you talk about that, like early days of Bitcoin, I had a conversation with Charlie Schramm, and the way he was describing those early days of Bitcoin are very much about like a group joined together, believing in each other, working together. Like it doesn't feel so much like the maxi culture that we've kind of grown to accept. And now, of course, with Ordinals, it's completely different. I'm not going to say the October conference had no maxis, because they're still there in little ways.
I don't think maxis would show up to a conference that is supported by stacks.
That's true. I will say,
I
but
don't
the
think they would-
sentiment, I
yeah.
guess coming from ETH, I'll say the
Yeah.
Bitcoin is superior and the only way sentiment still kind of wove its way through. And in Ethereum, I think I don't know, there's very few ETH maxis now. It's more like if you come to our conference, you'll see every single chain there. So it's just a different perspective.
And I think that Bitcoin is superior in a lot of ways. But by the way, I mean, there's aspects of Bitcoin that they got it right, like liveness. Liveness is the main property, and so Bitcoin has never gone down. Now you can argue is like, longer than 10-minute block times a DDoS, is that losing liveness and stuff, but Bitcoin has never gone down. Now ETH can claim that too, but I think that was really, really important.
For the ETH boys.
But I think that that's really, really important. The other thing that I think they got right is inscriptions, I think is a very good model because it's human readable. You're effectively just inscribing JSON onto a UTXO. It's very Unixy, and that's kind of my background, and I love that. I don't want to have to decode bytecode.
Oh, 100%.
But okay, so kind of with inscriptions, because this was like the biggest thing coming from ETH, right? It's like, okay, you tell me, like when I got onboarded to ETH, everyone's like, yeah, this stuff is uncensorable, and I'm like, that's literally not true. But you know how to go to a smart contract and like find the token URI, right? And you know where your image lives. And when inscriptions first happened, it took me months. Every day in the Ord quarter, I was like, okay, guys, how do I take like the witness data and turn it into an image if there are no indexers, right? If they all go down, how do I know that like my information will still be on Bitcoin? And for text inscriptions, not, but for images, you do have to use like.
Yeah. If you
but
want to
I also have a video, and you can do it in less than 8 minutes. It's easy. I could figure it out. So like, I think that stuff is important, right? And especially for ETH people, when we talk about like, being rugged all the time, it's like, how do we know this is real? We're used to like having these things. And I think it's important for trust, right? In Ordinals, for getting people on other chains.
So can we talk a little bit about part of the problem with ETH and EVM?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
There are no problems.
There are some problems.
It's fine.
There's some.
Leave us alone. We're down.
Nothing's perfect.
There's some real.
We're up from.
Real serious problems in the EVM. Number one is contracts are stateful. So you don't actually own the tokens that you think you own. What you own is a slot in a mapping in a contract. The correct model, in my opinion, is what the move language does, which is an object-based token. So you actually own, your account owns the object, and ordinals are much more akin to that. Gotcha. Yep. You own it. You own it. This is not some like your ownership of this is not represented by some data in somebody else's program that they completely control. And it also leads to a lot of vulnerabilities because when you introduce composability and you have one contract calling another contract and that contract has state in it, you can now use reentrancy to drain that first contract. So there's a lot of problems in the EVM, and I think that there's a lot of things that inscriptions get right. What's missing right now is the compute aspect. So there's not a lot you can do with your inscriptions right now. There's not a lot you can do with your ordinals right now. That's coming. And we were talking about building this all from the ground up, and it's going to come in so many different flavors.
100%.
Well, I would say there is. So I'm with you, right? And I'm a person who always complains about people saying, like, look at it's on chain. And I'm like, dude, this is a proxy contract. They can just point it to another contract. But there's a thing we do. We throw the keys away, right? And I think it's kind of beautiful. I love it when a founder is like, we did it. It's permanent. Throw the keys away. Then you can't. Now, I do still own an index into an array. I own one in the array. Great. But it is at least unchangeable. And I also think there is this nice like symbolic moment, right, of like, okay, cool, things can get modified. I mean, remember, apes were mintable. More apes were mintable for like over a year, I think, until they were like, all right, guys, we're gonna throw away the keys. I'm sorry about that. I know you guys are getting freaked out. And like that was a nice celebratory day of like the owners can't do anything, which is kind of goofy, but I mean, I agree with you in some ways, but throw the keys away.
I think
I agree, but how many do?
Wait, say it again?
How many founders do that?
Yeah. The ones that are worth $4 billion
I feel like it became a standard though, right? Like it became a standard to do that. And it was like, until you do that, you're not a real collection. So I think a lot of like, we have this, in between area of like what we are creating as culture and like social consensus versus what actually happens on chain. And so I think it's really awesome that like so early in ordinals, we can also do, things to try and move that behavior that we don't like from ETH away. But I think there's a lot of people that are trying to build things that do a lot of the same things as ETH, which whatever, we'll see if it works. And if it doesn't, sometimes I'm like, why are we doing all this? Why don't we just keep this on one chain? Keep this on one chain.
Well, I think so. I mean, I think a lot of the like Bitcoin DeFi stuff will be very, very additive.
Well, I mean, with Omnisat, right? Like I'm fully sold on DeFi on Bitcoin and it makes sense, but
yeah, no, I absolutely. My point here is that you kind of want to keep data and compute separate. That was the broader point that I was making.
Yep.
And that's how we've done things in programmer world for a very, very long time.
Forever.
So I think it's really the design of inscriptions and ordinals lends itself to some really nice patterns in a way that EVM does not.
So can I ask a question? Because I feel like one of the biggest things that ETH people, right, like the sales transaction history, all of that on ETH, you don't have that on ordinals. And so that's something that, like, what would your answer to someone who likes that aspect of tokenized assets? What would your answer be?
Archive it. Yeah, there's no reason you can't archive the sales history on Bitcoin. And
okay.
It'd be a separate, it wouldn't be directly on chain.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be. People just want to know where it was.
Yeah.
And where it went.
I think some people do care about it being on chain.
Yeah, maybe.
And I think like that's a part that to me is really cool, right? In ETH NFTs is like this flow of like, wow, it went from this person to this person, and you have like all these connections in a story, right? With art, I think, and just stuff like that. And so, yeah, I don't know if there's a way that could ever happen on Bitcoin, or your thoughts.
Through code, all things are possible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's a way it could happen. Somebody would have to change the core code of Bitcoin, and then the community would have to accept it, and the miners would have to roll it out. But
easy.
Those
guys are just quick announcement, guys.
Let's
get on the same page.
I mean, look, we got OpCap back, right?
Yeah.
What can we do?
So I think that
for me personally, I get what you're saying, right? Like the story of where the art was, who owned it, everything. It is interesting. I've never cared that much about it. If I want to buy an NFT, I want it for me. Yeah. So maybe that's just my bias.
This is why you're not making money trading, okay? We got to work on that, okay? That's it.
Well, and also gift giving. I mean, like with gifts and communities, and that's reputation building. Like if I'm in Jen's community and she's giving me an NFT, like that means something. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
There is that.
And like I think, you know, what Transient Labs did with story inscriptions, right? And like how you can like leave comments for each other. That's like something that when NFTs were explained to me, I like thought you could do and you couldn't until now. And I just think like the level of communication and my like first, you know, importance of all of this is like the censorship resistance. And I think that I don't think like Web3 social or social on Bitcoin will ever make sense, but I think there's a different way of like documenting history and stuff in real time. And yeah,
we're on Ord.io leaving comments. That's like the funnest part of Ord.io. That's what I like to go there, is just go there and say, sick one. You know, so.
Yeah.
So but before we wrap up, we'll do some closing statements before we wrap up. I do have to say one thing, just because it's going to hopefully upset you guys. We need the maxis to develop, right? I would say we would not have Ordinals today without Luke Dasher. I think Ordinals would have come later. Like these people really, now you're never going to convince them. But you need someone who doesn't want to get involved in this world to focus on other core infrastructure pieces. 100%. And it's like, I think that a lot of people are like, fuck these maxis, get them out of here. I'm like, no, they're contributing. They are actually helping. Even though they're fighting against you, they fight slow.
I think nobody really has a problem with maxis. You know, I think people just have a problem with their attitude towards other people trying to do something with a permissionless chain. Like,
I honestly think it's so funny.
No, well, it is funny, but I'm saying
it makes me so bullish.
But and I come from like, you know, every startup I have, the security engineer is an ornery asshole who's just like, what the fuck? I'm not letting you do that. No, you can't have that. And you're like, oh, you're such an asshole. You're making this so hard. Thank God you're doing that. That's why we're secure. There's this thing where sometimes they're going to be assholes and annoying. And that's why devs, a lot of times you put them in a basement in the back, keep them away from the customers, because they're going to be like, what the fuck, you idiot? And it's like, I think that's the maxi situation. So it's like, you know, you let them hang out, go to their spaces, listen in, but never, I feel like you shouldn't go in there and fight with them. It's just like, let them.
I mean, that's engagement too, right? I think ultimately, you know, fights and, you know, like real life disagreements on Twitter Spaces, they drive attention.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, to your point, obviously on one side, it's the tech side, right? Like we wouldn't have Ordinals if it wasn't for Bitcoin, right? Like obviously. But at the same time, we wouldn't have Ordinals where they are today if it wasn't for maxis actually complaining about it so fucking hard at the beginning. They actually made it popular. The fact that they were shitting on it, the fact that they were like, oh, Udi, what the fuck are you doing here with this Taproot Wizard? What the fuck is this? They actually brought it to life much quicker, you know? And so like we thank them, you know, again, like I have nothing against anybody. You can have your own beliefs. Like the only thing when it starts being a little bit ridiculous is like when people really attack each other and like us for doing something, you know, that actually like doesn't even concern them too much, to be honest. Like we're actually even driving the Bitcoin price up because miners are fucking happy. You know, miners have printed like, I don't know, $350 million this past year, thanks to Ordinals. That means that they're going to be pushing the Bitcoin narrative. Now we have the ETH. Like, you know, again, it all just makes sense, but I get it. Like people have certain values and certain beliefs and they're going to be fighting for them. But again, I personally have nothing against maxis, you know. Like,
totally.
We're welcoming.
I think it's actually the opposite. They have something against you, and I've always found it entertaining.
100%
funny.
Yeah, it is definitely entertaining. Yeah. No matter what, if there's a space that with Udi's fighting with someone, I'm gonna listen. Okay,
Let's go.
Udi versus Luke. I'm stopping the program and I'm listening in.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe just to wrap up here, just you know, anything you're super excited about this week that you learned that you didn't know about, and then just where to find what you're doing next.
Yeah, I mean, this week's been great. Being a part of this Ordinal Denver house has been great. I mean, I really kind of fell in love with the Ordinal community back in October when I got to meet the On-Chain Monkey team, and there were Node Monkeys were there, and a bunch of different NFT projects were there, and they're just fantastic. No, I tell everybody, Ordinals, it's kind of where it's at. Pay attention. A lot of great ETH projects are expanding into Ordinals. You're going to see a lot more of that coming up. You know, it's a multi-chain world, so that's where I come from, and excited to be supporting Ordinals over at Cloudland. So happy to be here.
Let's go.
Beautiful.
I mean, for me, you know, I mean, I live and breathe this space. So, it's just like mind blowing to me that I come here to Denver and there's just so much fucking alpha being thrown around. And like some of the things that I cannot even talk about, because they're not public anything, but like it just feels so crazy that like everybody's building, everybody's like preparing for the next wave. And obviously we are kind of in a bull market, or at least like we're so close to all time highs. So like you cannot really deny that like something really crazy is happening. But at the same time, like people are really, the energy is crazy, So that's what I'm excited about. Like, we're doing a bunch of stuff, even on the community level. Like we're hosting the biggest Ordinals event in Asia in May, which is something that I'm super pumped for. And like, I can see that people are, a lot of people are going to come, a lot of people that were here today or, throughout the week, they're going to come to Hong Kong maybe for the first time. And I'm just excited for that because like, again, like the amount of support and the amount of energy that I see is just electric, so I'm just pumped to be alive, like, what can I say?
100%. Well, everyone else is using your wallet. That's pretty nice too. While we're in this,
yeah,
they're upstairs right now. Like it must be nice to watch something you built be that heavily used all the time.
100%.
They're just sitting. The audience is just sitting there degenning the whole time here.
Yeah, I hope so, guys.
I'm excited for Bitcoin kind of becoming a full-on blockchain that has programmability, that has compute, where you can do a lot of things with it. You're going to be able to earn yield on Bitcoin native. I think that's really, really exciting. It's going to be great for the space. It's going to drive more adoption. Bitcoin is obviously a first-class asset in the space. It's the only asset that TradFi will really touch. And there's ways you can earn yield on your Bitcoin, but they're sort of convoluted currently. So having native yield on Bitcoin is something that I'm really, really excited for.
Totally. And last, definitely not least, if you guys don't know, this Ord Denver house, it's all put on entirely by Jen, actually, okay? So
let's go.
Running around like crazy, wrangling so many people, and like it's just been an amazing event. Jen, what's going on?
I agree.
I have not slept in probably my whole life, but I feel like I've missed out on a lot of things on Bitcoin. I was literally on my wallet looking at some stuff on Xverse, but during this, sorry about that. But no, it's been awesome. I think like a month ago, right? I paid for this house on January 22nd, so like less than a month. Little more than a month ago. I don't know days. But I was like, Ord Denver, like we're doing it.
Crazy.
And everyone was like, this is kind of crazy. Why would you do Ord Denver at ETH Denver? This house was literally lit up orange. We had like 300 people outside at one point in line waiting to get in.
Wow.
There were ETH people here. There's gonna be a lot of like cool stuff. There's the thing with Gamma. It's actually like from the mempool, their first block when they started, and everyone colored in it, and everyone will have a chance to like get it. So a lot of people will be getting like their first inscriptions. I think we did a good job of onboarding people. We've had people building and working. Like
Amazing.
It's just been awesome. It's been so fun. I haven't gone to ETH events at all, which
Me neither.
whatever.
I didn't even get a ticket.
Same. Why would you?
Just like why?
I did.
Why?
I did, but that was before we were doing this. But yeah, it's been amazing to like just talk to everyone, get to know everyone in person. I feel like I didn't go to Miami, and it was literally like the week that we started Omnisat, like we're all talking, and I was like, I'm gonna go to EDC. I'm not gonna go to Miami. But like I left that house and I was like none of my friends are gonna understand, but like I have never been this inspired. But really until Basel this year, I hadn't met most Bitcoin people in person, and I just think when you bring people together in real life,
Yeah,
nothing
you guys are
beats it.
absolute legends. I mean, it's crazy what you guys have done. Like, I've never been to an event like this.
This
Like,
is
I am not a rave guy. I'm not a party guy. I'm sorry about that. I'm just not like, that's not my vibe. But like, I came here last night and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like really? Like,
I've thrown some
this
raves.
is amazing.
So yeah, this is like a this is a month, zero budget, and
The best raves are zero budget.
well, yeah, I mean, yeah, but it was fun, and a huge shout out to Mike from Asigna too, because I didn't even know, I'd never met him, okay? I didn't meet him that time at IRL, and I'm like, hey, you live in Denver, right? Like, can you go check out this venue in person? I could book a flight tomorrow, but you're there, just FaceTime me. I've never met this person. I really don't know. We have talked every single day. Like, he has gone so hard and been so great in this. So it would not have been possible without him. But yeah, like, that's Ordinals, right? We're just like, we don't know each other, but now
Let's go.
we're trying to buy. Okay, low-key, we are trying to buy this house. So this house is for sale right now.
Is it really?
We need 55 Bitcoin. That's it.
Just a couple more flips, everyone. So
Okay.
we're hitting. We're hitting.
So then it's ours, and we can have a permanent Bitcoin home in Denver because this is the longest standing ETH conference, and just fuck shit up. So I don't know.
Just wait till we
putting it
own.
out there.
Wait till you see what the rave looks like once we own the house. Okay.
Yeah.
Just give us some time.
Oh.
I gotta
We
say
tried to make it happen before the event because I wanted everyone painting on the walls, and then I wanted to inscribe
Oh,
all
yeah,
of it.
yeah.
But, you know,
I gotta say something that's kind of funny about this house. So if you go on Google Maps on this house, it has 1-star rating because the people that rent it hate the owners.
So our owner, I've not my first rodeo, but you have to know what you're doing. I talked to them for like an hour on the phone before I booked it. I sent Mike out. I was like, does he seem chill? Every person that works here, because he wants his people working, right? But he's so cool. Like, we're like, he was outside smoking weed with people today.
The owner?
Yeah. Like, he's so cool. And his story, it's like, he has crazy stories. He's really cool. This is a butler school, so he's like very uptight, right? But that's what he does. But no, he's been having fun. And so when I was like, do you take payments? I had to wire money, right? He sends me the contract Friday at like 5 p.m. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to lose this venue because everyone plans, right? Wiring money that is the biggest argument for crypto. All you have to do in crypto is copy and paste numbers. That shit is so complicated. I'm like calling
it
the
takes
bank.
forever. Like,
And I was like, you would have had your money by now in crypto. And then I was like, if I had paid you in crypto on the day I booked it, this is what you would have had now. But before I even said that, he was like, I want to learn. And he was like,
Yeah.
I want to come to the
That's
workshops. And like, that to me is the biggest win, right? Like, I brought a lot of my Web 2 friends in, and like, they're all now open to the idea of crypto because I'm like, this is so inefficient. Ew, I have to send a wire. Web 2 sucks. And I think that's like,
No Block Explorer either. You have no clue
I
if
know.
it
I'm
reached.
like,
Like, there's
I'm
no
like
way.
calling the bank.
Like,
I'm like,
where's
why
the
is
money?
it saying it's processing 2 days from now? What? Like, where is it? I want to give
Only
them an
open
update.
8 hours a day, 5 days a
And
week.
then everyone, they're like, Jen, like, it's chill. We know this takes time. I'm like, oh, I'm so used to crypto. Like, sending that Etherscan link, be like, it's on its way.
where's my transaction?
Bitcoin?
Give me my transaction.
But yeah, no, it's
No, I just want to say one more time,
Owners
like,
have
big
been
props,
awesome.
guys. Like, this is amazing. You know, I loved it. You know,
We're doing more. Okay.
I'm sure.
All right. We're doing
sure.
more shows, more parties, more everything. Okay. Just wait
Let's
and see.
go.
this is the first. We'll do it
Hong
right
Kong.
next
This is
time.
the start.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're all
If you need
invited
help,
to
if you
Hong
need
Kong.
help streaming anything,
Oh,
hit us up.
I've thrown raves in Hong Kong.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, it's up to you. You know, I told you I'm not a rave guy, but you know, I'm gonna empower you.
You just never went to a good rave.
I want to like tell everyone, and I think this is really important because people really don't nail this with events in crypto. And something that like, we have a rave in the basement, but like, the music was talking level. We had speakers at different levels in every single room on the main floor because people just want to talk. And it's why we're doing the
And it's
panels.
amazing, yeah.
We're doing the panels down here so people don't have to be quiet. They can watch the stream upstairs and still have conversations because we all listen to each other talk all day on Spaces all the time. Yeah. We're with all these people and you can talk to more than 5 people at once. And like, that's where the magic happens.
I
So
was
you
on.
don't need to be at a rave.
I was on 7
Good vibes, good
panels
people.
this week. This is
Holy
the
shit.
only one where I can hear myself.
Really? Wow.
All the other ones, people are talking there. At one of them, I had to yell at everybody to get out.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bullish.
The panel in the basement is the best one. That's what I'm saying. Okay.
And by the way, there's people upstairs talking right now, doing what they want to do.
Well, and also, I mean, Vegan, you're an amazing host. Like most of the other panels,
Thank
if
you.
you've been on them this week, you know, I've been on multiple panels this week. Like he's actually listening and participating and like didn't give us a list of questions to like
No,
start with.
the first
Thank you.
The first 3 people I hit up, I got alcohol sponsorship, the mushroom gummy sponsorship, and then I hit up IRL Alpha, and I was like, I want you guys to do all the streaming, all the conversations, because not only if you're in LA or you're not in LA, we go every single Thursday. It's awesome, but it's also online, and you do your research on people, but you also care, and I'm like, I know you guys can handle it, and you have to be here because IRL is alpha.
IRL's the alpha.
Let's go.
Beautiful. And now it's time to party, right? Right, time for
really?
share
Okay,
alpha.
so we were not supposed to have a party tonight, but everyone wants to have one. So we have
So
I
secure.
smell.
We have security again.
Okay, security's here. That means we can party.
Smell Rafe
So
again.
we're having one.
Beautiful.
We're gonna have to. Yeah, we can get some people here.
We'll figure it out. All right, we're gonna sign off because you can't see what happens at the party. You gotta come.